HR is that place where everything comes that they don't know what to do with.
It's
So
the catch-all.
it is.
It is.
So you all of a sudden become the facilities manager. You're the events planner. You're all of these things in addition to your day job. So I think that when you look at the advantages of PEO, I said earlier, we're builders. When you're an HR person, you are. What a PEO does is it allows you to focus on that build so that when those things come up, like you've got to build a severance package or you really need help understanding the new compliance laws in New York, you have this team of experts that sits behind you. It's like this project team that can do anything, and the technology that supports that is really good. And you have Fortune 500 benefits. So if you have all of that stuff, if the baseline and the foundational blocking and tackling is covered, then you as a builder, as an HR expert, you get to do some of that strategic work.
Thanks for listening to the PEO Pod, where we are simplifying and optimizing the employee experience. This week, my guest is Michelle Mikesell, who's the Chief People Officer at one of the nation's largest PEOs. Being in HR is really tough, especially if you work for a small to mid-sized business. Michelle has seen that firsthand, and working for a PEO has given her a unique experience of providing HR to a company that provides HR to companies. One of the main things we focus on is what does it actually mean to have employees that flourish in the workplace, and where, if at all, does a PEO fit into that equation? Michelle is incredibly sharp and very gifted at what she does, but more importantly, she just genuinely cares about people and wants her employees to flourish. So I know that you're going to enjoy the conversation as much as I did. There's probably going to be some people listening who don't have the pleasure of knowing who you are or where you come from. So could you give me like a 2-minute backstory on just how did you end up here doing what you're doing now? Like, what's the Michelle Mikesell story?
Oh, well, the Michelle Mikesell story might be too long for us since I am of such an advanced age. But what I would tell you, experienced, yeah. I had the benefit of working for an amazing PEO for 16 years. I was with Insperity and loved that great company. Got called, GNA called me, and offered me an opportunity to take a role here internally. And one of the things that was so exciting about it is, HR people are builders. We just are. So if you get to go and build your own thing, I was like, okay, this is a perfect way to do that. Perfect way to go out. I'm going to go do this for a couple of years, and then I'll be done. But then I showed up, and I got here, and COVID hit 30 days later.
Oh yeah,
30 days after I got here.
That's bad timing, or good timing,
really
depending on how you look at it.
For me, it was one of those things that I got here, and we were just trying to figure things out. We were trying to figure things out while we were trying to build and trying to do it, and I was so humbled by these people and by this ownership. And what happened, when COVID hit, the owner stopped taking his salary. The executive team took pay cuts. And I had employees calling me saying, what can I do? Can you just cancel my Costco membership? Or, hey, I'll give my cell phone back. And I started writing to the employees, and it created this bond. So for me, COVID, in that respect, the connection to this company was a brilliant, beautiful thing, because I got to get to know, at the time it was 353 people, really, really well. And what a gift. What an amazing gift.
That is crazy. I had totally forgotten that you started right before that. And what a weird 2-year span. My wife and I talk about it often, how are we going to explain to our kids that for basically 2 years, the whole world kind of shut down a little bit? Just an interesting time, especially from an HR perspective, because it was really easy to lose the human touch during that time, which that is kind of the essence of HR. And so what did it look like to be an HR professional during a time where you don't have face-to-face with people a lot?
I think you reinvent yourself, and it's what you just said. The humanness of it all that's where we leaned during
Mm-hmm.
COVID. We just found a way to communicate. We, started to do things. How do we bring people together virtually? How do we support one another in ways that we've never done before? The norms were everybody coming into the office
Yeah.
and, getting to see
Yeah.
everybody. And so it was really discovering different ways to build relationship.
Yeah.
And you do.
Yeah. And it's, it was obviously during those 2 years, it was like virtual to the max. But even now, I mean, I think most workplaces, maybe not most, but a lot of workplaces are still predominantly virtual. And so it's kind of created this new reality for us where it's like you have to learn how to interact with your employees virtually because that might be their reality permanently.
You do. And I think that you have to find balance. I think that, and you can kind of see this today in
Mm-hmm.
corporate America, it's adjusting. And what's really happening is this hybrid model is becoming very prevalent. You see some businesses shifting more back to an in office experience,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of folks saying, okay, we're going to do that part-time, right? What's best for the employee, but best for the company. So we can still connect and we
Right.
can collaborate and we can still honor the times that employees, get the opportunity to maintain that work-life balance, being with their family, going to the soccer game, doing
Yeah.
those things. So how do we do what's best for them?
Yeah. So that's one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about today is I really like, I think it's either every Monday or every Friday. Once a week, you send an email to the whole company, and it's usually a very well thought out, and you're a great writer, email.
Thank you.
And it's clear that employee flourishing is something that's really important to you and probably to most HR professionals. And so can you maybe just talk about like what does that actually look like, both from your perspective, like how do I help my employees flourish, and also from the employees' perspective of what are they looking for in an organization that helps them flourish in their personal and professional life?
Wow. So yeah, as I said, I started writing to him. It was actually every day during COVID, during the
Yeah, I remember
experience. And
that.
that was just really this connected thing. And then, we got about a year and a half in and I was talking to John W. and said, I think I should pull it back just a little. So
It's hard to write stuff every day.
it wasn't then though.
True.
It just kind of pours out of you because you're trying to keep them informed and tell them, hey, here's what we know right now. And
Right.
so when you talk about flourishing employees and the company, I think it comes down to two things: authenticity and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that our employees appreciate, that we're sharing information and we're trying to share it in the most because the messages aren't always uplifting.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're acknowledging something that was pretty intense, and it's written a little bit more like a blog.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's not.
Which is I appreciate that it's not overly formal. It's kind of off the cuff.
Yeah,
feeling.
a little bit. And so I think that when the folks that you're working with know that you're accessible, because
Mhm.
I have a lot of people write me back, send me a note, or we'll have an interaction about whatever it was I was talking about. And so again, that builds relationship, which is great. And then I think they feel like, okay, I know more about the folks at the company and who I'm
Mhm.
dealing with, and if I have a problem, I feel safe. I can reach out. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to build that connection. And then from a transparency perspective, you got to tell the truth, and sometimes that's hard messaging. Like we went through a thing a couple of years ago with PTO,
Mhm.
where we always had a cap,
Mhm.
and so you got a certain amount of PTO and you could only roll over so much every year. It kind of restarted. And that was really hard because in our business, we're helping people enroll in benefits and do all these really big things at the end
Yeah.
of the year. So we changed our PTO policy and kind of we went from a cap to, from the, rollover to the cap to the top of it. And it was trying to explain some of that, and folks
Yeah.
are like, wait a minute, you're taking my time away. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, we're just doing it differently so
Yeah.
that you can manage your time. But having those conversations was tough.
Yeah. Well, and you're in somewhat of a unique position where you're providing HR to a company that provides HR to companies.
I know.
It's like that's such a unique role. So as you think about, like, obviously what PEOs do more intimately than probably most HR professionals. So like when you think about just the typical small to mid-sized business in America, and maybe we'll define that as a group that has less than 100 employees.
Okay.
It's been my experience that usually they probably do have an HR person, but they probably don't have 5 HR people, right? So it's one person who is tasked with, I want my employees to flourish. I want to make sure that we have a succinct and seamless back office. I want to make sure my people have good benefits. I want to, like, there's all these different things that they're doing that you have the benefit of 3 or 4 other people helping you. That solo HR person probably doesn't have that type of support. So as you kind of put yourself in that person's shoes, like, what are some of the things that a PEO does that might just lighten that burden and help them really focus on more the strategic side of HR?
Well, and I actually think it's even a little bit harder, right? Because HR is that place where everything comes that they don't know what to do with.
It's
So
the catch-all.
it is.
It is.
So you all of a sudden become the facilities manager. You're the events planner. You're all of these things in addition to your day job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what and it's tough a little bit to do PEO, to do HR, to lead the HR efforts for a company that does HR across the U.S. Because these people are really good at what they do. So I think that when you look at the advantages of PEO, I said earlier, we're builders. When you're an HR person, you are. What a PEO does is it allows you to focus on that build so that when those things come up, like you've got to build a severance package or you really need help understanding the new compliance laws in New York, you have this team of experts that sits behind you. It's like this project team that can do anything, and the technology that supports that is really good. And you have Fortune 500 benefits. So if you have all of that stuff, if the baseline and the foundational blocking and tackling is covered, then you as a builder, as an HR expert, you get to do some of that strategic work. And you have a sounding board. If you have to build a succession plan because your workforce, is aging, if your workforce, what do I do? Okay, what does that look like? And you have a team that can help you do that.
It is interesting. So I've been doing this about 9 years, and I feel like the first few years that I did it, I don't know that anybody would have ever said this to my face, but I got this sense that when I was talking to HR professionals, they viewed us somewhat as an adversary. Not always, but sometimes there was this, I could tell they were keeping me at arm's length because there was maybe a feeling that we were coming for their job. And I'm sure there have been instances out there where a HR person did lose their job because they were replaced by a PEO, but I almost never run into that anymore because I do think most HR professionals, or at least the ones who are aware of PEOs, are viewing us more as, like you said, the support system or a supplement to what they're already doing and helping them do those things better. So it is interesting. I interviewed another chief human resource officer, and she said the exact same thing that you did, which I think was just interesting. You'll have the same perspective.
Well, I think as you've watched the PEO industry mature, I think that what you said, this maybe more territorialism or lack of letting go was much more prevalent 15 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But as the profession has advanced, as the PEO industry has advanced, you really see this difference, right? Because you can't do it all. We know what's on our shoulders as HR professionals. And so you need that team that you trust to say, hey, I'm going to be focusing on this. These are the 3 things I need from you.
Well, and kind of to our original point, I mean, I think COVID really accelerated the growth of the PEO industry, predominantly because there are so many virtual employees now. So 5 years ago, I would talk to a company in Dallas and they have 30 employees and all 30 of them are right there in their Dallas location. And now they might have 30 employees, but 15 of them are in different states. And the regulatory environment as you start crossing state lines gets more complex.
It gets really complex.
Finding benefits that have coverage nationally gets more complex. And so again, you put yourself back in that solo HR person's shoes, and how on earth could they be expected to know how every state operates, how every local jurisdiction operates?
I was just going to say, it's not even state anymore. Now you've got to know what the municipalities are saying and they're doing, and no one person can do that all. They can't. And so I think that every business, every growth-minded business is really thinking about, okay, what resources can I use? What technology can I have in place that's really going to help me achieve that growth?
We used to have this marketing campaign called the $1 Million Employee, and it's one of my favorite things we've ever done because it's this whole concept of, if you could find an individual that would do all the things that we do for you, you'd have to pay him $1 million. Like, that person doesn't exist. or if they do, they're very, very highly compensated and have no personal life. You
None.
know, so I mean, yeah, obviously I'm biased, but I think PEO is such an eloquent solution, and I think for the longest time it was maybe perceived as, okay, PEO is a company that will do my payroll and give me cheap benefits, and it's like, well, yes and maybe, but it is so much more than that.
It's so much more.
You know, like just 30 feet to our right, we have all of our operations people who are actually providing the services to our clients. And I'm like, I wish I could just like put a camera up and like people see what these people do all day, because they would have their mind blown at like the amount of work that we do for clients. It's unbelievable.
It is. You know, it was funny. Sometimes I stand back and just watch my team, because
Mhm.
we have a very open environment here,
Mhm.
really really great office space, and so you know we can see out and in, and so sometimes it's just really rewarding to watch them, to stand back and watch this team of professionals work.
Yeah.
You know, and how they interact in this. You know, they're sharing information, and it's not one person that solves a problem. They're
Mhm.
always, and I think virtually that's what's happening with some of our virtual teams, you know, using the Teams tool and chats. And
Mhm.
we do a lot of data and analytics, because I really believe that
Yes.
for a business to grow and get better, you got to know what's going on in the business. So
Yeah.
we're all about analytics, and we do stay interviews and exit interviews and monthly scorecards. But in that data, the number one thing, when you look at the reasons that people stay with us, and the reason that their teamwork and leadership are right at the top
Really.
of that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Remote work's in there too. They love that.
Yeah.
But you know, that connection they have with one another, and they've found that virtually.
Mhm. Well, and I've seen the other side of that too. Like I saw something one time where it's like people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses.
They do.
And there's obviously exceptions to that rule, but having a manager that like actually genuinely cares about you goes such a long way. It trumps salary, it trumps flexibility of work. I mean, there's so many things that trumps of just having a person who champions your success professionally. Um, really ingratiates like a sense of loyalty to you as an employee.
Well, it's funny, that's not new, right? For the
Right.
last 30 years, well, it's a lot. Last 30 years that I've been doing HR, it's been the same thing.
Mhm.
If you have this, so in our corporate HR department, we have a why, because we needed to make sure that we were, why do we do what we do, especially in an HR company that provides HR services. So our why is that every human should feel valued. That's our corporate HR why. So
Makes
when
sense.
you're coming into the organization, we want to make sure that there's a connection and you feel valued and you feel greeted. But if you're leaving the organization, even if you're leaving the organization not on your terms,
Mhm.
we want to make sure that you feel valued, that you feel supported, that you feel
Mhm.
informed. And so I think that it's got to be about that. You know,
Mhm.
you've got to have that central purpose and the how you're doing it, and really why are you, because HR today is hard,
Yeah.
because you're all things to all people.
Yeah.
But it can be really really rewarding
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what you're talking about resonates. I think I've had small business owners tell me that they feel HR is kind of a necessary evil. They're like, this is not how I want to spend my money. I'd rather go hire 10 more sales guys, but like I know I need to have HR taken care of, kind of the CYA policy. But what you talked about analytics, and I've always thought one of the things that's really interesting is how our NPS and our eNPS really align closely. And maybe for people who don't know, like NPS is just a metric of how good your clients think you're doing, and eNPS is an internal metric that's describing how your employees think you as a company are doing and taking care of them. So I'm sure you've seen that metric as well. Can you talk about just the correlation there, and um, ways maybe that employers can help the eNPS go up, and essentially how they can make employees be happier?
So again, if we go back to earlier in the conversation, the employee net promoter score is, you know, would you recommend G&A Partners as a place to work to a
Sure.
friend or a family member? And it's an answer to that question on a 1 to 10 scale, right?
Mhm.
And then you look at the numbers, and
And you only get tens, right?
no, no, but it goes back to
That's
my
the
point.
beauty of it, is like transparency.
It is the beauty of it. So it's two words: it's authenticity and transparency.
Yeah.
So I asked my team. I was talking to my team, and I said, "Listen, we've definitely had hiccups over the last 5 years, and so what have we learned? What together have we learned? Because that's not a question I could probably answer by myself." And what they said is that you have to be flexible. You
Mhm.
have to understand. And so our ENPS because they can provide comments in the ENPS. We've been able to implement programs or change things based on what is important to them. The data that we look at, and we can tie it back to, all of the data, the data for people coming into the organization or staying with the organization, turnover data, cost of hire data, performance score data. You talked about managers and leaders. We can start to look at all of that, and then we put it together, and we look at our exit interviews, and we look at our ENPS, and it always tells a story.
It does.
And it tells the story about what it is employees want to see, what it is that they really need to feel connected.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's not something that's going to show up on your P&L statement, right?
Nope.
But there is absolutely a return on investment in investing in your HR infrastructure, both from a technology perspective, from a benefits perspective, from a personnel perspective, because the more you do that, the more you're creating a culture of, I care about my employees, and they know that on a very deep level. And happy employees makes happy clients makes a profitable company. Like it's undeniable.
It's undeniable. I think when you look at the data that's out there, the metric that most use is 30%. It increases, shareholder value by 30%.
I would believe
Who
that.
doesn't want a 30? And it's not only a 30% increase in value, it's doing the right thing. It's like when we're in our regular lives and someone, even at the Starbucks, is just kind to you, puts a smiley face on the cup, tells you to have a great day. That's a totally different experience than someone that's like, here's your coffee. There's you want to participate more. You want to be engaged more with that.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to that happy person at that company made the customer happy. ENPS, NPS tied together.
Yeah. It is eerie how similar those two trend lines correlate with one another. And so
yeah, and we've had hiccups, right? We've had places where the lines have parted a little bit, and I think that is listening. Okay, what are they saying?
What's going
right?
on here?
What's really going on? Or if the scores aren't as high for a couple of weeks, diving in and starting to find out, okay, what is it about? Is it about the length of the short-term disability? Is it about that PTO that we talked about? Or is it really about, hey, I'm just struggling right now, and I need some form of connection?
Yeah, interesting. So one of the things I try to do at the end of each podcast, and I probably should have
We come to the end?
Yeah, I probably should have prepared you for this. But I give people what I call like a soapbox moment, which is basically like, a minute to 2 minutes of you can say whatever you want to say. So I'll try to frame it a little bit. A lot of the people that probably typically listen to this are either HR professionals or maybe people in the PEO space. And so if you could hear them say one thing about how to help them love their company and allow their employees to flourish, like what would your advice to them be?
Wow. So John W. is watching this right now, and he's going, oh no, Hayden just gave Michelle the opportunity to say anything she wants for 2 minutes.
Softball.
Yeah. Uh-oh. What I would say to HR professionals out there is that what you do, how you show up really does matter. It really makes a difference. There's a great book out there. It's written by a gentleman, Dr. William Schneider, and it's called Lead Right for Your Company Type. And I would recommend that to any HR professional out there because it really talks about the impact of culture on driving business results. And, one of the things that he talks about is businesses they're started by people, right? They're operated by people. The leaders in the business are people. And so when you talked about the P&L and, there's no human capital line on the P&L, there certainly is an impact. And culture makes a difference. And so you have to practice what you preach. You can't be saying one thing and going in a different direction because folks they know everything, right? They watch they can tell when there's a shift in the business because when, they're coming in and they're around and then all of a sudden they come in and the doors are closed up and there are meetings with doors closed and things like that.
Something's going on.
People are smart. Your employees are smart and they want to feel valued. And they want to do a good job. They want to feel valued. So the biggest thing I would say is you got to connect with them. And I think that the most important connection happens kind of where you indicated earlier. It's at that frontline manager line. And so Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. When you lead people in any way, shape, or form, you have a greater responsibility than just getting a paycheck.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks for spending time with me
Oh,
today.
it was so much fun. I thought it was going to be hard, so it
No,
wasn't too bad.
that was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good job.